Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan from stepbysteppainting.net, and in this acrylic painting tutorial I'm going to show you how to paint hot air balloons over water with tulips in the bottom of the painting. So kind of a unique, really pretty pastel-y, bright sunset color scheme in this painting. And I'm doing this on an 11 by 14 inch canvas with acrylics, of course. And I'm going to start this painting by dividing my canvas in half. So this is the 11 by 14 canvas, and I'm going to do a horizon line right in the center of the painting. So you want to go ahead and set up your canvas, find the center, you can estimate it, and then use like a T-square ruler or a regular ruler to lightly draw a horizontal line across the canvas. And that's going to divide your sky and your water in this painting. Next, we're going to go ahead and paint the sunset, and the sunset consists of 4 colors: titanium white, light pink, primary red, and cad yellow light. I will also be using a 3/4 inch flat wash brush. So go ahead and load your palette with those 4 colors. You'll want to start with your brush wet but not dripping wet. I had already dipped my brush in the water and kind of tapped it dry. I'm going to load about equal parts of red and white on the brush. So you see me mixing the 2 colors on my palette. Then we're going to start at the top of the canvas, and we're going to paint left and right strokes across the sky. Now this is a sunset, which means we're going to be doing a lot of blending of pinks and yellows to make different kinds of shades of oranges and yellows and sunset colors, but it doesn't have to be perfect, and yours doesn't have to look like mine. We're going to go down about 2 or 3 inches with this pretty color, and the light pink, or the primary red mixed with white, will make a bright pink color because the primary red is more of a pink red than like an orange red. Then, after I went down about 2 or 3 inches, I grabbed some of my light pink and I blended that light pink up into my primary red color and kind of blended it together. But I didn't go all the way across with that light pink. I left some gaps open so that I can blend some other colors in there. Then grab some titanium white and blend some white towards the bottom. In sunset paintings, a lot of times the brightest part of the sky is towards the bottom horizon line because that's where the sun is and where it would be shining the brightest. So I added more white towards the bottom, but again, it doesn't have to look exactly like mine. And at no point did I rinse my brush. I just kept loading colors. If your brush seems to be getting kind of overloaded, you can always take a towel, wipe it off, and then continue on with your colors. I'm going to introduce some yellow into my sunset. So I'm going to mix about equal parts of the cad yellow light with the titanium white. That white will lighten that yellow up so it's not too strong. And I blended that yellow up into some of my pink colors, and I'm letting that turn orange. So when my yellow blends with those pinks, that's where I'm getting that light pastel orange color in there. You can always introduce some more titanium white in there. That really helps with the blending, and it also makes the colors in the sky softer. So I'm grabbing more white, especially towards the bottom horizon line area, and I really want this white to create a glow on the very bottom of the sky. Then I'm gently brushing it up into the sky and letting the rest blend. You just want to be careful not to over blend your colors in the sky because then they end up all turning the same color, and we don't really want that to happen. You can also paint the sides of your painting with the colors that are on your palette. So I usually just take the flat brush and just brush on that color. It can match the sky or it can all be the same color, so that's up to you. Next, we're going to move on to the water. So the water is very similar to our sunset. It does not have to mirror the exact colors of the sunset, but they are the same palette, so I'm not introducing any new colors here. I started with a combination of the light pink and the yellow, and I made kind of an orangey color, and I did that below the horizon line. And I just did left and right strokes and kind of letting that color blend on the canvas and leaving some open spots so that I can add some white or pink in other areas. So you just want to do left and right strokes. You want to leave a portion of the bottom blank for when we do the greenery on the bottom. So I'm going to go down with the kind of orangey yellow color, but I'm not going to go down all the way. I'm just going to try not to over blend it. So it's kind of orangey. I'm going to introduce some of that pink in there towards the bottom so it mirrors the sky a little bit. We got a little bit of that pink reflecting on the bottom. And there's still kind of an open gap in the upper left that I left blank. I'm going to add a little bit more white in that area and blend that. That'll be kind of a bright, glowy area in the water. There will also be a mountain in the left, like a bluish mountain, and I'll paint some blue reflection in this area later. But for now, I'm just taking that white and adding that in there so it's kind of bright and glowy, letting that white kind of blend with some of the other colors down into the orangey reddish area. Next, I'm going to apply a green area at the bottom where I left the gap. So that gap is about 3/4 inches of space. If you painted your water all the way down, that's okay. You can let that dry and then paint your greenery over it. That works as well. I'm going to completely rinse my brush and I'm going to add Hooker's Green Hue Permanent to my palette. And with the 3/4 inch flat wash brush, I am going to paint a green area on the bottom of my canvas. I like to add a little bit of red to my green, especially in landscape paintings. It makes the green look a little bit more natural. It's going to look kind of like a brownish green, but it's going to darken it up, maybe a little bit more green. You just don't want to do equal amounts. You want to have your green a higher amount and just a little bit of red into it. If you don't want to mix red into your green, you don't have to. You can see the difference it makes between the pure green and the kind of a natural looking green. So I'm just going to paint an area. It's kind of an uneven area, a little bit sloped on the left and right, maybe a little bit lumpy towards the middle. Doesn't have to be exactly straight. This is where we will be painting the tulips. So some of this is going to show leaves and grass, and some of the tulips are going to be popping up and overlapping the water a little bit. Next, I am going to mix the color of our pretty bluish purple mountain that's in the distance. I'm going to rinse my 3/4 flat brush off and set it to the side. I'll be switching to a number 8 round brush for this. So get this rinsed off, set it to the side. We'll be using this later for something else. And I have light blue violet, Dioxazine Purple, and some fresh titanium white if you need to freshen up your titanium white. Before I paint my mountain in, I'm going to draw it with a pencil. So there's two kind of mountainy areas over here above our horizon line. There's a one over on the left that kind of has a larger peak and a shorter peak. And there's one on the right that has kind of a shallow hill, and the one on the right overlaps the one on the left. The one on the right is going to be black. The one on the left is going to be our that pretty purple color. To make that pretty purple color, I'm going to grab about 1 part Dioxazine Purple, 2 parts light blue violet. So I'm going to mix those together. It's going to make a lighter version of that Dioxazine Purple, kind of a bluish purple color. And about 2 or 3 parts white. Gradually introduce that white in there to lighten that up. A little bit of water on my brush, and that darker part of that I'm going to use to start with the mountain. The mountain on the left is going to be painted that color. So this is the number 8 round brush, and I'm going to start by just kind of outlining that mountain. So outlining it, and then I'm going to paint it in solid. Adding a little bit of water to your brush kind of helps flow it and thin it out a little bit. I'm just dragging that color down to the base of the mountain. I'm not going all the way down because I'm going to add white into this. I'm going to add white at the bottom and gently blend that up. You can even use your finger to blend. That didn't really work very well, but using the brush, blending it up into the mountain. So the base of the mountain kind of has a foggy, lighter color to it, and the top of the mountain is darker. Blending that up, and then you want the base part with the white to go down to the horizon line. Try not to paint below the horizon line where that water is. So just left and right strokes at the bottom with the white, and try not to go below that line. I also have that hill on the right. I'm trying not to overlap the hill as much, but if you do, that's okay. The hill is going to be a very dark purple black color that'll be overlapping that area anyway, so that's okay. I'm just going to fill in this part right here, and we'll worry about the darker hill later. So there's our purple mountain, our light bluish purple mountain that is. And then I'm going to wipe my brush off, and then I'm going to grab a little bit more white, and the plan is just to lighten this bottom part up a little bit more with that white. It's a little bit saturated in that area, so it's not going to lighten it up too much, but just wanted to get that extra little pop of white down there. Blend it up into the rest of the mountain. So for my darker mountain, I'm going to introduce Mars Black to my palette, and I'm going to mix Mars Black with the Dioxazine Purple. Both are very dark colors, so a little bit, so I would say like 3 parts Dioxazine Purple, 1 part Mars Black. Doesn't have to be exact. But this mountain or hill overlaps our purple one, so we're going to start by overlapping it, painting it up. And it grabs a little bit of that white that was already right there on that purple mountain. That's okay, because we can be okay with our mountain being a little bit lighter at the bottom, but darker on the top. So I'm just filling that in. And this hill is going to have some pine trees on top of it too. I'm going to extend this a little bit more to the left. So it's very flat on the left and almost just disappears in that misty light area on the bottom of that hill. If you've been painting the sides your whole time, you can take that color and extend it on the side as well. Next, we're going to rinse our 8 round brush and go back to our 3/4 wash brush, and we're going to do some reflection in the water. So we're going to do some very simple reflection. I'm going to water down my Dioxazine Purple Black combination. So water it down slightly. Load the tip of the brush in that color and use the tip of the brush to do left and right, very thin strokes. So this is the darker hill that's reflecting in our water. We're just doing very, very light left and right strokes just under our black hilly area. And we're not going to go down too far with this. We're just going to go down maybe a couple inches, and it's just going to get kind of thinner and kind of fade out towards the bottom. It's a little bit thicker right under the hill. And then we're going to rinse, and we're going to do our blue mountain reflection. So same thing, use that same color of the mountain and water it down slightly. For this one, I actually used the full width of the stroke at first to make a thicker reflection. And I just kind of lightly blended that down into the rest of it. So, and I let that color just kind of fade out. So instead of doing the thin strokes with the tip of the brush, I actually used the full width of the brush. And then I went in there also and did a little bit of the with the tip of the brush. I just didn't want to lose the color of the water, but I wanted a very thin layer of that pretty bluish color to reflect in that area. Next, I'm going to switch back to the number 8 round brush and do the trees in this painting. So with the trees, I used the Mars black color. You may have to water down your black a little bit to thin it out and to get a little control on these trees. But with these trees, I started at the top and made a little point at the top. And then I did strokes downwards to create the branches. These are thin, tall trees. So this one on the far left is our tallest tree, and they're just going to kind of go shorter and shorter as we go to the right. So I'm just stroking downwards to create the branches of those trees. The tree is getting kind of wider as I work my way down the canvas. I'm going to just keep going down until I hit the black hilly area. Again, adding a little bit of water to the black kind of helps with the flow, but you don't want too much water because you don't want it to drip down. I'm just stroking downwards until I reach the top of that hill, and it'll just kind of blend in with the rest of the hill. So there's our first tree. It may help to kind of draw your tree out first if you want to do it that way, so you kind of get an idea of the placement of the tree, just making the top of that tree a little bit taller. I'm just kind of stroking down and going over some of these branches to make them stick out a little bit. So there's our first tree. And then I'm going to do a second tree that is shorter than that one. I actually grabbed a little bit of purple that time too. It's okay, that purple is super dark. Gives that black a little bit of a purplish color. And just doing the same technique. It's a tall, thin tree, but it's shorter than the one next to it. Just stroking downwards until I get to the hilly area, and it blends in with the rest of the hilly area. And then I'll do a third tree with the same technique, and I'll do a fourth tree, and I did a fifth tree. Depending on how much space you have, you can do 5 trees, 4 trees. You could even do 1 tree or just do no trees. It's kind of up to you how many trees you want in this area. Next, I'm going to draw in our large hot air balloon that is on the upper left part of the sky. So use just a regular drawing pencil and draw your balloon. So sometimes it helps to kind of look at an image of a hot air balloon while you're doing this. So we're just going to kind of start by doing a wide sort of oval shape, like we're drawing a teardrop, and it dips down to the bottom and it kind of goes flat on the bottom. There's the top part of our hot air balloon. This one's large. It takes up a large portion in our upper left part of our sky, but it doesn't overlap any of the mountains. And do our little basket. Make sure you leave some space below your balloon for your little basket. I'm going to erase this bottom part just a little bit so that I can have a little bit more space under my balloon area and basket. Kind of make that part darker. And then the basket I erased and made it a little bit more square. So next we're going to paint our balloon in, and before we add all the pretty colors to our balloon, we're going to paint it white. That's so we can get some good coverage over our sunset colors. So I'm going to freshen up some titanium white onto my palette, and I'll be using the number 8 round brush for this step. I'll also load my colors that I'll be using in my hot air balloon, and I used primary red, cad yellow light, and so we're going to go ahead and paint the balloon in first white. So grab your number 8 round and the white and outline the balloon and then paint it in solid white. You want to paint in kind of contouring strokes. That just means the direction of my stroke is going in the direction of the shape. So it's kind of curved strokes, long curved strokes, kind of curved at the top, just filling that in. You don't have to worry too much about this now because it's just white so that we can make our balloon look nice and bright against our already bright sunset sky. Then we'll go ahead and paint our basket. I didn't rinse my brush off at all. And instead of loading brown on my palette, if you have brown, you can use that. But I just mixed equal parts of the green and red together and made a brownish color and mixed with some white. You can even just do this with black. It doesn't really matter. Paint the basket area. I accidentally painted it way too close to the balloon, and I'll have to wait till all this dries later to kind of remedy that, but that's okay. Beauty of acrylics is we can always paint over things after they dry. So speaking of drying, we want to make sure our white from the balloon is dry all the way before we add our colors to it. And so just kind of let that dry a little bit and then go back to it, or you can grab a hair dryer and dry that area really quick and then paint it. Then we're going to grab our number 4 round brush. So this is a smaller brush than that 8 round. It's smaller and it's going to give us a little bit more control over the colors. And I'm starting with primary red. So I'm starting at the top and I'm just dragging this red downwards in kind of an angular direction that curves. Then I'm going to grab my yellow and mix that together to make an orange color. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to drag the strokes downwards. These strokes are mixing with my red color. So this red is going to kind of blend to an orange color, and I'm just dragging it downwards in a contouring direction to create the shape and form of that balloon. We're not being realistic with this balloon. It's illustrative. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're not painting all the bumps and shadows in this. We're just applying pretty color to it. And plus this balloon is kind of in the distance, so we wouldn't see a lot of details with this. So I have an orange area, and I'm just going to go down with that, and it's going to eventually turn into more of a yellow towards the bottom, just dragging my brush downwards. So it's kind of creating more of a yellow area as this orange blends outwards. And I'm going to rinse my brush off to get all that primary red out because I want the bottom of my balloon to be a little bit brighter. So I'm going to grab some yellow and mix equal parts yellow and white together. And then I'm going to apply that to the bottom area, and it's just going to blend kind of upwards. So instead of dragging down, I'm kind of dragging upwards, but I'm still creating that same direction with the stroke, kind of contouring to create the shape of that balloon. That bright yellow is blending gently with our orangey color. So it's kind of bright on the bottom of our balloon, and then it blends kind of darker towards the top. And then I'm going to grab some more red, and I'm going to kind of add more red at the top. We're kind of in the middle here. Blend that down a little bit more with the primary red and whatever else was on my brush. I'm just kind of blending that down. I don't want to take over all my bright yellow color. Rinse, grab some primary red, and kind of work the top area again. So I'm kind of defining more of that top outer part of the balloon, dragging that down. There's just primary red on my brush, so it's a little bit darker. Painting over just the top, a little bit towards the middle and towards the bottom, but trying not to take over too much. Grab some more white on my brush, and with that white, I'm going to go back up, blend this a little bit more on the bottom with that white to make that bottom part of the balloon a little bit brighter. Just stroking kind of upwards, letting that paint gently blend together. And then a very solid horizontal line right there on the bottom of the balloon. Again, we can go back and apply more space between my basket and the balloon after this dries. I went in and added some more color to my basket with kind of that black and purpley color. So I added kind of a second coat, but I did it just on the left to make the left part of the basket a little bit darker, and I left the right part without it. And I'm just going to kind of loosely outline some of this to create some shadow on the bottom of the balloon and on the top. Next, I'm going to do the reflection in the water from the air balloon reflecting in the water. And I'm going to do this with a number 4 round brush. Slightly water down some primary red, mix it with a little bit of the white. You could even use some of that light pink color if you want. And I'm just going to do left and right strokes, kind of creating a reflected shape of the balloon, so kind of mirror opposite. Starting with the pink and just doing left and right strokes, making this wider towards the middle. Throw some yellow in there. Does not have to be an exact mirror of the balloon, just an impression that the balloon is reflecting in the water. It's little left and right strokes forming kind of a balloony shaped area. Then you can reflect the darker area too with the black purple combination. Just a little area, left and right strokes to create the basket reflecting in the water. Then I added a little bit more orange reflection towards the bottom of this balloon. Just a few more left and right strokes. Next, I'm going to work on the grass on the bottom. So we have grass, leaves, and tulips in this area. We're going to kind of simplify this a little bit. And I'm going to start with Hooker's Green Hue Permanent and add a teeny tiny bit of red into that to make it more of a natural green color. If you don't want to mix red into it, you don't have to. I started this grass with the number 4 round brush, but I ended up switching to the number 8 round brush, so just kind of bear with me. The 8 round brush is easier to use because it's got more of a finer tip to it that'll create thinner strokes. But to do these grass strokes, you just kind of paint the brush and kind of flick the brush upwards. So you start at the bottom of the blade, you just stroke upwards. With this 8 round, because the tip of the brush is a little bit more pointy, it allows our grass blade to be thinner at the top, so you kind of move your brush kind of fast to do this technique, and the tip of it creates the thinner stroke. So I started at the way back of our grassy area and doing the green, but I'm also grabbing a little bit of that black too, a little tiny bit of that black, so our grass blades have a variety of kind of darker and lighter, but the black makes that grass blade a little bit darker. So I'm doing more darker grass blades in the back, and it overlaps our water a little bit, so I'm just brushing that brush pretty fast, stroking it upwards. And we can utilize the yellow on our palette, so that cad yellow light, and you can utilize the white and the green. You can have fun kind of mixing different colors, and you're just layering your grass on. So the grass that's kind of towards the bottom / front is lighter, so I'm using more of the lighter colors down there. So I'm doing another row of grass that kind of overlaps that back grass, and just doing a variety of colors. Adding a little bit of water in your paint to thin it out really helps with the flow and get some more control over your grass blade so it's not thick. You can control it to create that thin little point at the top. And just kind of some lighter strokes at the bottom that overlap our back strokes. So you're doing all this grassy layer in there, and then we'll paint some tulips that overlap a lot of our grassy pieces. So for the actual tulips, you'll need to let this dry before we apply our pink tulip colors to this. Otherwise, our pink is just going to mesh and blend with the green and kind of look messy. So make sure that area is dry. And then when you're ready to paint your tulips, you want to freshen your palette with some primary red, titanium white, and if you want to use some of that light pink color, you can use some of that light pink color too. So we're going to do some simple tulips here. I'm going to start with, I'm using my number 4 round brush, by the way. I'm going to mix about equal parts of the primary red with the white, and when you mix those two colors together, it makes a pink color. So load your number 4 round brush in that pink color, and let's make a tulip over here in the lower left part of our grassy area. And I'm just going to take my brush and stroke upwards to create kind of a teardrop shape. It's kind of pointy at the bottom but flat at the top. And then I'm going to load my brush in just the primary red, so it's darker. I'm going to stroke upwards to create some petals that are overlapping that center lighter pink part. So I overlapped that, but I didn't cover all of the pink. And that is the simple technique we're going to do for each of these tulips. I'm going to repeat this by creating our centerpiece, stroking upwards to create kind of that oval shape, then grabbing a different color. So this one, I actually grabbed some white and I did my petals with white and let that kind of blend, and I created 2 petals that overlapped that center part. So you can just kind of repeat this technique for each of your tulips, altering the colors slightly. So some middle pieces might have more darker pink, some middle pieces might be lighter and more of the light pink in it. So you can alternate your whatever color you're overlapping it with, it can change. So this one I did kind of a darker pink center, and I grabbed more white the second time around, and I did 2 strokes going upwards that kind of overlapped that center piece. So if you kind of zoomed the camera out there for you a little bit. You can see what it looks like kind of far away. They're little tulips, so they don't have to be detailed or realistic. We're just doing a whole bunch of them, actually. You're just repeating that technique. This one, I started the outer petals kind of upwards, and I kind of curved them outwards, more like what a tulip does with the petals. And you're just creating different variations of your pink and white. You can even use some of that light pink color if you want to alter some of that. If you wanted to add a little bit of orange or yellow in your tulips, you can do that as well. I just did the primary red and titanium white for all of mine. So I'm just going to kind of keep repeating this. Some tulips are kind of a little bit bigger and more towards the bottom, so maybe the bottom, some of our bottom tulips are overlapping or going off the canvas a little bit. Some are kind of further away, so they would be smaller. Some tulips are overlapping some of the back tulips. And then I'm going to fill in some of the gaps further away with just small little curved strokes, oval strokes. So these are tulips that are smaller, kind of further away, and they don't have much detail, and I'm not going to do the petal thing over them, just little strokes with that primary red color, and just kind of filling in some of the gaps, this field of tulips, all at the bottom of our painting. Next, I'm going to rinse, and I'm going to do some stems. So some of our tulips are towards the bottom, and they may have some stems visible. So I'm going to mix cad yellow with some of our leftover green on the palette. You can load some more green on your palette. So I'm making like a light yellowish green color and some titanium white in there. So mix yellow, white, Hooker's green hue to make kind of a lighter green. And again, very simplified. We're not making this look realistic. And just doing stems that kind of go down from the bottom of our tulips. And switched to my 8 round here because it's got more of that tip on it that I can control and create some thinner lines, versus my 4 round doesn't have much of a point to it. Got more of a flatter rounded point, so it's harder to create thinner lines with that brush. I'm just going in there and doing kind of lines, that stem lines that kind of go down. Maybe we may even see some tulip leaves. So I did some kind of a leaf shape with the lighter green on the bottom. Some of those leaves kind of overlap some of our tulips, but you don't have to do that. There's a lot going on down there. It's a little bit busy. It's not really that noticeable if you don't do your leaves. Some of my leaves might be larger. So with these leaves, I kind of put pressure on the brush as I stroke down to create the wider base, but use a little bit of the tip of the brush to create that point at the end. I'm going to get all these brushes rinsed off and loaded some titanium white onto my palette. I'm going to add some white reflection lines into the water next. So I'm going to use my number 8 round brush because of the point to the brush, the very fine tip. Load that in the white. I'm going to very gently brush white horizontal strokes across my canvas, so short strokes, not long strokes, and it's going to overlap some of our air balloon reflection. It's going to overlap some of our hill and mountain reflections. And it's going to create some water texture, especially in the areas where there's not really much line or reflection. So just kind of loose white lines all over the water area. This next step is optional. I mentioned earlier that I wanted more of a space under my balloon and basket, and I was going to do that later after my acrylic dried in that area. So it's fairly dry right now. I'm going to kind of show you how I'm going to remedy this. So when I mess up on a painting, which does happen a lot actually, I usually grab my titanium white because that's an opaque color that we can use to cover up whatever it is we want to paint over. So I always recommend just grabbing some titanium white, painting over that. And before the white dries, I'm actually just going to grab the yellow because that white is in the sky anyway. I'm going to grab that yellow and just kind of blend an area up there into the sky. I'll just kind of drag that out, make it look like it's part of the sky. So I can create a gap between the bottom of my balloon and the basket. Then I can go in and decide where I want that bottom to be. So it's got more of a gap underneath the balloon. Not much more of a gap, but just enough. And then I can go back in and just kind of remedy the rest of that balloon. I can even take my black and make it look like the strings that are holding the basket and kind of loosely outline the bottom of it. So now we have our little extra gap under our balloon and basket. And the next thing we're going to do is add another balloon in this painting to kind of balance out the right side of our painting. So I'm going to draw it. And you can do multiple balloons actually. You don't have to do 2, or you can just do 1 and not the other. But I'm just going to draw the same thing, but it's going to be a lot smaller above our trees here, doing my top balloon shape. So it's curved at the top. It goes narrow and flat on the bottom, space, and then a little tiny square for our basket. And we can do our little lines that are holding the basket. And then I can use my round brush. So the same thing, we got to white out the shape of the balloon before we paint it in. I'm going to use number 4 round brush, titanium white. I'm going to outline the balloon and then paint it in using the curved strokes. This is a little balloon, so we're not going to go into much detail with the colors here. Grab either the black or the Dioxazine Purple on your palette, or even you can do the brown, the green and red combo on your palette. So any of those dark colors to paint your basket in. And then we are going to add the color to this balloon. So this one's going to be a different color, kind of a bluish purple color. You can wait for this to dry. You can get a hairdryer and dry it, or you can just go ahead and paint it. It's just a little guy. So even if our white kind of mixed with our color anyway, it's not that big of a deal. So I'm starting with red. I'm going to do kind of the same thing, but I'm going to add purple to this instead of orange. So I started with the top, same technique as the other one with the red, and then I stroked down with the red, and then I grabbed the purple. So this is the Dioxazine Purple, stroked upwards to let that blend. And because my white wasn't dried all the way, it grabbed some light white in there, but that's okay. I liked how it kind of lightened that color up. more of the red, kind of stroking downwards with the red, blending that red with the purple. Doing more of that red, that primary red at the top, kind of stroking down with it, contouring strokes. Then I rinsed and did a second coat on my basket. I also did the little strings going up from the basket and outlined the bottom part, a little bit of outlining on the bottom part of the shape of the balloon. Then I'm going to grab a little bit of white and I'm going to do a little bit of highlighting at the bottom of the balloon. So just dragging a little bit of that white kind of upwards into the balloon to brighten that bottom part up. And then I'm going to add a little bit of white to the left part of some of our basket on the left balloons. So grabbing titanium white just on the tip of the brush, actually the right part, just dragging that white very subtly on the right part of the balloon, kind of highlighting that part where the light might be hitting that area. Same thing with this balloon, a little bit of white right there on the right part. A little pop of white gives it some dimension and highlight. And I added a little bit more white reflection water lines kind of in the bottom area. And I'll do the balloon, our purple balloon reflection in this area as well. Just a little bit of white kind of here and there, smaller strokes kind of in the distance. And then I grabbed a little bit of that light, the purple color, so some of the Dioxazine Purple and light blue violet, and did a little smudge of left and right strokes reflection area for our little balloon. And that is the conclusion of our hot air balloon and tulips sunset painting tutorial. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching and thanks for painting with me.